Some residents under lockdown in Shanghai say they are running out of food amid the city's biggest ever COVID outbreak. Residents are confined to their homes, banned from leaving for even essential reasons, such as grocery shopping. Nearly 20,000 cases were reported on Thursday in China's biggest city, another near record high. Officials have admitted the city is facing difficulties, but say they are trying to improve this. But public anger is also being stoked by other drastic measures, such as the removal of children from their parents if they test positive. Shanghai officials later responded by allowing parents who were also infected to accompany their children to isolation centers.
确实有一些特殊需要的一些儿童呢。
For children with special needs, we are accepting voluntary applications from their guardians who, with a full knowledge of potential health risks, can accompany their children after signing a letter of notification and commitment. For children whose family members are infected, we will admit both of them, so that the children will receive better care. In terms of admission and treatment, we have increased the manpower of specialist teams to ensure that children receive proper observation and treatment. Meanwhile, we have set up special zones for children. Compared to grown-ups, children need more care, so we will enhance relevant services for them.
For more on this, we can now cross live to London and join Arise correspondent Lape Olarinoye. Lape, thank you for joining us on Newsday. Now, there's growing concern about how stringent some of the Shanghai lockdown rules are. Could you please tell us more?
Hi, good afternoon to you all, ladies. Well, yes, of course, they're very stringent, and that's in typical kind of Chinese fashion, where they are no strangers to lockdown. They've had lockdowns over the period of the last 2 years sparingly, but we're seeing a re-emergence of those lockdowns, particularly in bigger cities like Shanghai, where about 25 million people reside, as well as the fact that it's a huge part of China's economic hub. We're seeing more and more of these stringent rules, as you rightly mentioned there in your intro, about people not even allowed to go out for essential shopping for groceries and so on. And people are being resorted to essentially shopping online and having to order food in. The government also have delivery trucks that are dropping kind of food, vegetables, meat, as well as eggs as well, to people's front doors to have access to basic kind of food supplies. Unfortunately, because of how stringent these rules are, which is plausible because there's a 20,000 infection cases just on Thursday, just earlier today, we have seen that there is a knock-on effect on the food supply. And so many people aren't getting food as easily as they previously were. Even worse, it's affecting, it's affecting people across different class groups as well as generational divides as well. I mean, I read one of the reports from one of the Chinese residents that lives in Shanghai, who said that he's never had to live through hunger ever in his life. This is the first time he's witnessing or even encountering such levels of hunger. And so those are some of the measures, and even worse, families are being separated, as you've rightly seen there in the soundbite, where parents who aren't testing positive and have children that are testing positive are still being separated. You're not allowed to isolate in your home. Even if your symptoms are mild or you're asymptomatic, you have to go to the quarantine or isolation center, which many residents are describing as, really, really horrible conditions, and they just don't want to be there. They'll rather isolate at home. But the Chinese government is adamant that they must isolate there. So it is causing a lot of friction between residents as well as the Chinese government.
Well, Lape, how is this then affecting the supply chain across the city, especially for food?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a little bit about it there, but I'll go into more detail here. I mean, the reason why it's affecting the food supply chain is predominantly because the whole city is under lockdown. Previously, just last week, it was divided into two parts. I mean, some were under more stricter rules, and the other half of the city was allowed to move around relatively. But now we're seeing that lockdown and those measures spread across the whole city. So even those who are in charge of bringing food around and delivering food to people are also in lockdown. And of course, hand in hand with that, we're seeing a higher level of infection rate. So that's really slowed down the food supply chain. Of course, people that are affected by this are people that are, less tech savvy, that can't order online, as well as the elderly as well. So we're seeing it, affect people all over the city of Shanghai. It also is affecting the food chain supply because shops have had to shut. So people aren't able to get food, even whether it's online or whether it's been delivered to their front door. So there's a huge impact in that sense. And so, of course, it's causing more and more people to not have access to food, water, and even, basic supplies to feed their families who are being forced into isolation, whether they are testing positive for asymptomatic cases or whether, their families are being split apart. So it is having a huge domino effect, and it could potentially get worse if those numbers don't dwindle.
And what's been the response to some of these concerns?
Yes, I mean, there has been widespread complaints, however, and we've seen that from many residents that are saying that this just can't really continue, is not sustainable. So the Chinese government today has said that they will open wholesale supermarkets for a limited amount of time, just so they can kind of fix that supply chain issue and deliveries can move around a lot quicker. Whether or not they will let that run for forever or for the duration of the lockdown is still up for debate, but they have said they will respond to that crisis now by letting wholesale supermarkets open and for people to actively order food online to their doorsteps, as well as allow people to deliver food supplies to people's homes. So in the meantime, that could fix this glitch, but they are adamant that they have to sort out the problem of the infection rate. And by the way, it is worth adding here that China is the only country in the world that is trying to eradicate COVID and especially the Omicron variant, whereas many other countries around the world are just learning to live with the pandemic and with the new variants that seem to be popping up. But actually, China is trying to do the opposite, hence why they're living through such stringent measures.
All right. Well, thank you so much for clearing that up for us, Lape, and for joining the program this afternoon.